So once upon a time, you and I used to make a living out of photography. Do you remember that?
When was that?
Yeah, so stock particularly is what I'm thinking of. And I remember in the 1980s coming across the idea of stock for the first time and thinking, wow, that's a cool way to make a living, because you can make pictures and then lodge them in a library, and lo and behold, people can buy licenses to use, and so it proved for a while.
Yeah, and wait for the checks to roll in. You know, that was the theory, and actually that was the practice for some time. Same as you. I remember reading about stock libraries in the early 80s when I was a student, and thinking, when I leave college, this is what I want to do. Of course, it took years to build it up, but right through the 90s and into the early noughties, that was my game. Of course, now the internet enables us to reach out with our photography to anyone right around the globe, but it also means that the perceived value of photography has never been lower. So
Yes,
exactly,
it's a one-way track.
Exactly, which is slightly inconvenient, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, it certainly is meant changing, and it's true that you have to adapt, don't you, to if you want to continue to do this, what is a very, very privileged lifestyle.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for you then, Joe?
I'd like to think I carry on doing what I'm doing for now, because I'm really loving doing what I do, doing quite a lot of teaching, doing a lot of work with other people and supporting them, and really, really enjoy doing that, whether it's groups or in one-to-ones. But at the same time, I'm a very selfish person when it comes to photography. I love making photographs for myself and want to be able to do that. So, you know, we have a little gallery up in North Yorkshire, which it remains a kind of focus for. I can put my work in there, my prints.
Yeah.
Clearly, my gallery colleagues prefer it if I do pictures that they think people want to buy, whereas I just want to do what I want to do. So there is sometimes a bit of tension on that front, and I still feel that I have book projects that remain unfinished. But you could say that I'm interested in making pictures just as an expressive art. That's really what I would aspire to do.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, it's changed totally over the last 10 years, and now I'm producing photography predominantly for our Chasing the Light photography magazine that we publish for our F11 membership. That's really the motivating force behind all of my photography. And of course now that means that all of the photography is self-induced and self-motivated, and I'm finding it quite a liberation, really. I'm not having to think of producing photographs to sell through the stock industry, which was always a bit of a creative straitjacket, quite frankly. And it's opened up all sorts of opportunities, so that's quite exciting, really. But it all comes back to wanting to be there behind the lens, you know, setting out by the light of our head torch in the darkness before dawn. Those moments, that's what just doing that, that's still the
So the funny thing is that I remember meeting up with David Ward, who you know, for the very first time. It must have been in 1983 or something like that at Charlie Waite's place in London. And him saying, "Oh, you can't make a living out of landscape photography," and there was a bunch of other photographers there. We all got together. It was a landscape photographers get together, and there were some very, very successful advertising photographers in that group who were making lots and lots of money doing what they were doing. They all wanted to do landscape photography.
Yeah.
And in some respects, that desire to do what I think is still a poetic calling remains. I have people coming on workshops of all ages, you know, literally from late teens to people into their 80s who want to be out with their cameras, who still feel that literally the call of nature, the call of the wild, the call of the outdoors, you know, whatever you want to call it. And that is their highest aspiration, to do something that feels really personal, really expressive, and yet is in nature. I think that's not surprising.
Well, you and I will probably carry on doing our photography even if no one else is noticing what we're doing anymore, just for the sheer love of it, I'm sure. And what I often say to people is, actually think carefully, because if you start trying to equate your photography with money, you can lose the pleasure of the hobby. You can lose your hobby by trying to marry it to an income.
Don't give up the day job.
Absolutely.